It's pretty common these days to hear some questioning the whole idea of God because they think it conflicts with science. People want to think of themselves as smart, intelligent. In times past, people needed God to explain the unexplainable, but hey, today we've gotten a lot smarter and we don't need that hocus pocus stuff anymore. We have science. In science, we trust. Now let me be clear that I think science is great. I love science. In fact, I spent my first 2 years in college as a science major and I find it fascinating. So let's not be Neanderthals and go around saying it's stupid. It's not stupid. Science is great, but it has limitations that need to be acknowledged. As wonderful as science is, it's limited to the study of the physical and natural world through observation and testing. It all starts with what can be seen, and as more and more data is collected, a hypothesis or a theory is postulated, and then there's multiple testing and experimentation. If the results verify the theory, a conclusion is drawn. It's observable and it's repeatable. You observe that as the temperature drops, water turns to ice. After testing, science knows this happens because as it gets colder, the water molecules slow down and eventually stick together, creating a solid. Science can explain what and how it happens, but it can't really explain why the cold has the effect on the molecules that it does. That's kind of out of its league. God takes things to a level where science can't go, but it's great to that point and should be respected. As good as science is, and it's good, it's important to acknowledge that it's limited to current understandings, which, as we know, are always changing. Did you know that it was science that killed our first president? Yeah. George Washington had this throat infection. So the 3 doctors attending him, using the understanding of the day, said, what we need to do is bleed him. So they sliced and diced him, and they bled out 40% of his blood, and he died. Today we know that was wrong. A simple tracheotomy would have done the job, but the understanding hadn't advanced to where it is today. It was limited. Remember asbestos? Science told us it was a great material because it was resistant to heat and corrosion. It was used extensively in building materials from the late 1800s to the mid-1900s. But then science discovered that breathing asbestos fibers could cause serious illness, including lung cancer. But before they took it off the market, millions had died. In science, we trust? How about Agent Orange in the Vietnam War? Science told us it was a safe way to defoliate the jungle and expose the enemy, and it worked. But what science didn't know was that it contained an agent that was very toxic to the human body, and 300,000 to 400,000 veterans have died from exposure to Agent Orange. Some of the things that we're being told by scientists today will probably be proved wrong in our lifetime, and some will pay a very high price for its limited understanding. Science and Christianity can get along just fine unless people begin thinking that science is the only reality and the ultimate source of truth. When that happens, you hear things like, the supernatural can't happen because it can't be explained by science. The Bible can't be true because it contains miracles. And we know there's no such thing as miracles because they go counter to science. This, by the way, is a very unscientific approach because it starts with a conclusion, which in science you just can't do. Everything starts with observation, then the collecting of data and multiple tests and experiments. And if you do that, you begin to discover that there are a whole lot of things that can't be explained through science. You can't explain love or hate. You can't explain or solve racism through science. Sometimes medical doctors are in awe of people walking out of hospitals when they should have died. Or how about when some miraculously survive a plane crash when so many others didn't? It just doesn't make sense. Some say it's just luck or coincidence, but neither luck or coincidence can be proven scientifically. They're just alternate faith paths to try to explain the unexplainable without God or the supernatural. While science is great and we should embrace it, we also need to embrace that it's not the only reality. There are many scientists who get this and embrace both the wonder of science and the wonder of God because they're both amazing realities. Now, since our goal is not to talk about science, but to talk about Jesus, about this time I'd probably say something like, you may not be aware of how this other reality, the reality of God, works. That's what the Bible's all about. If you've got a few minutes, I can show you so at least you'll have an understanding. And if they say yes, you move ahead and you communicate the good news of the gospel. Because never forget, that it's the gospel alone that is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes. And that's our message.